Okay, this is my audience,
Hi.
and she'll be standing over there. A man in debt is a man in chains. A quote from James Lyndall Basford, circa 1882. This is a quote that relates all too real for students that are currently in college and future generations of students that plan to attend college as well. Many students that graduate from college nowadays have an exceeding amount of debt that consequently prevents them from living comfortably. Today I will be discussing with you the effects of college debt on students now and students in future generations, and also do a comparison between the debt that was in previous generations versus debt now. Let's start with looking at the college debt from the 1980s. I'm sure that you've heard from a parent or grandparent at least that you can pay off your debt if you get a job, but how realistic is that? With school becoming much more time consuming and majors becoming much more brain focused, it seems that it's almost impossible to possibly juggle in another job or any other extra time for, say, getting any extra money per se. And so, as a result, many people from the baby boomer generation refer to us as lazy because we're not able to multitask. According to Pat Garofalo from Think Progress, tuition in the 1980s actually cost $2,100, and that was just for public school. As for private school, on the other hand, it actually cost $9,500. Tuition as early as 2010, however, is nearly tripled in amount, costing approximately $27,300. When looking at this from a feasible perspective, it simply cannot be done because it's truly unrealistic to actually pay off. I mean, think about it. You have to balance having a part-time job as well as being a full-time student. There has to be a sacrifice there. I'll use myself as an example. I go to a private school and I actually tried to maintain two jobs last semester. Although I was relatively successful in maintaining the two jobs, I barely scratched the surface in terms of paying off any of my college debt. Not only that, my grades ended up suffering, and I now have to make up for that in the oncoming semesters. Technically, I want to talk to you about how college debt can't be paid for simply because there's not enough money. According to Mark Kantrowitz from Time.com, student debt has already exceeded $1 trillion in 2012. But why is that? It's simply because the government grants have failed to keep up with the pace of increasing prices of college tuition. As a result, it falls more on the families rather than the government to have to pay off this college tuition, which results in the never-ending cycle of debt. As I mentioned before, college tuition has tripled in size, and with that exponential rate of increasing, there's no way you can possibly pay it off within the school year of you attending. And as a result, as I said before, the debt keeps building up. Lastly, I want to talk to you about how college debt has actually affected the student themselves. We as a generation, and by we, I mean students that are currently in college now, so possibly anyone born between the years 1994 and 1997. Yeah, 1997. We're labeled as the millennial generation. And I know everyone's heard the jokes before about how millennials can't do everything, but there actually is some seeming level of truth to that. We're actually not able to pay for anything simply because we're too focused on paying off our debt. As a result, we struggle to basically get by with paying off basic needs such as buying food or paying rent. I even still live with my parents, however, I would hope to one day pay for my own apartment, but at the moment, with the amount of debt that I have to pay off, it's starting to seem like a little bit of an unrealistic situation. Not only does this physically affect students, but it's also affecting the mental of the students. There is such a thing as student loan depression. According to Stephanie R. Caudle from Huffington Post, students that suffer from student loan depression actually become debilitated while attending school due to the fact that they can't get over the guilt of knowing that they'll never be able to escape this debt. This is actually rather personal, but I suffer from student loan debt my sophomore year and much of last semester with trying to maintain 2 jobs. It's just almost a crippling realization that you can't actually escape the debt no matter how hard you try. However, you just eventually get numb to the feeling of knowing that you're not going to be able to pay it off. To conclude, college debt was much cheaper in the earlier generations, such as the 1980s or the baby boomer generations, versus what it is now. It's actually 3 times the amount that you had to pay in the 80s in order to attend school, specifically for private colleges like I attend. College tuition is becoming much more difficult to pay off because there's simply not enough money, and there's actually been cuts in the federal Pell Grant, thus making it more difficult for families to actually be able to pay off school. And as a result, many students suffer from student loan depression because they're unable to actually pay off this debt, and they become stuck in a debilitating cycle of never-ending guilt.